Well, it's 6:32. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This meeting of the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust Fund is it's December 19th, 6:30 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and Governor Healy's extension, a remote participation by all members in a meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen, I'm sorry, somebody's talking in the background, may do so in the following manner. See the instructions at the top of the agenda. No in-person attendance of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. We're going to call the roll because we are required to. So I'll start on my screen. Bill Cook, present.
Present.
Christina, are you here?
I'm here.
Ananda? Present, good. We read your list. Joseph Method. You look a little frozen. Joseph, you look a little frozen. But we know he's here, so we're going to count him. We have a very aggressive agenda tonight. So I want to get right into it. I did get meeting minutes for September. I got them about an hour ago. I haven't shared them with you. Meeting minutes are an issue, a concern. Hopefully we're working on it and we can get, we're getting to the point now where it's a very serious issue, and it's as Ananda's pointed out, it's threatened our credibility as well, and so we are working on that. Hopefully, we can have it all.
My understanding
resolved.
is the current update is that that all of the outstanding minutes will be completed by the end of the year.
Yes. So we'll have a big list before next meeting. The first item that I need to get through is just a housekeeping kind of thing, I hope. In order to let's see here. In order to I'm trying to talk and listen and do stuff at the same time. In order for us to close on the Habitat House, they needed to have a vote of the committee saying that we accept that the project is completed. Originally, they asked us to provide a certification to them. I said, we don't certify, we weren't there, but we will accept your certification because it's your responsibility. And what you have on your screen right now is a certification by Central Berkshire Habitat for Humanity that the project has been done according to the development agreement. I've reviewed it, Chris has reviewed it, and we're confident. This is a technical legal thing that's required for closing on the house. So can I have a motion that accepts the certificate?
I make a motion to accept the certificate from Habitat.
I second.
And the second, any discussion? I'll just say that because they're providing the certificate, they're still responsible for everything. If we provided the certificate, we would assume some of the responsibility. So this is a roll call vote. We're going to go again on my screen. Bill Cook.
Yes.
Christina.
Yes.
Ananda.
Yes.
Joseph.
Yes.
And chair votes yes, it's unanimous. Thank you for that. The next item that I'm sorry, Chris wants to say something, so I'm going to promote Chris to a panelist. Chris, go ahead.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Chris Rembold speaking. I wonder if the trust would also entertain a motion to authorize Fred Clark as your chairperson to sign the document that will accompany that certificate.
Yes, can you tell me what that document is?
It just says today, December 19th, the trust voted to accept Habitat's certificate and to
Okay.
authorize the chairperson to sign it. Otherwise, I have to chase each and every one of you. So if you
Yeah.
authorize the chair to sign on your
I
behalf,
make
that'd be
a
great.
motion to authorize the chair, Fred Clark, to be the signatory on all documents accompanying the certificate we just accepted.
Great.
Second.
Here, seconds all over the place. Roll call vote, Bill Cook,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Ananda,
Aye.
Joseph,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for the clarification. And it's a little harder when we're on Zoom than passing a document around a table to get everybody's signature. So
Thanks.
that kind of works a lot better. Thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is the ADU pilot proposal that we've talked about and voted, worked on in subcommittee. And I can see if I can find it in my stock of documents here and put it up on the screen if that would be helpful, or if Ananda, you want to become co-host, if you'd like to do that as well.
I mean, I guess what I'd like to ask is, at this point, we've all had access to it in advance. This is not new information.
Yeah, I don't need to see it again.
The new information is that Joe read it for typos. And where we had left, I mean, there was a motion to pass this at one point, so I don't know, we might want to just start fresh. But where we'd left the discussion that had an unresolved issue was how to manage the wording related to how the total pot would be divided. And so I'm proposing in the draft that was shared that we go with Joe's, I believe it was yours, Joe's suggestion that we strike the former language that had a minimum of 2 projects would be, or grants would be made. We strike that and we replace it with award amounts for loans may not exceed $100,000.
And
With that,
can you?
I believe that's at the bottom of page 3, perhaps.
Are they numbered? 1, 2, 3.
And the budget lines.
It's let's see, I can probably try and highlight it here. If you can see that. Can everybody see that well enough, or do you want me to increase the size of it, or?
Yes, I'm looking for glasses, so maybe.
Bigger would be better.
Bigger would be better. Got it.
We got a typo there. It says must may. So
Just a typo?
just a little typo.
Oh.
We will fix such typos. I don't know. Let's see. This is a
Say must.
PDF. I can't fix a PDF, but I can.
It is so edited.
Which would you prefer, must or may?
Must.
May not. You don't want it to have to exceed. You want it to not. Or you want it to say must not.
Yeah.
Must not. There's a document. There's a never mind. There's a standards document called IETF something something something, and it defines what must is. Must first May. You want to use must?
Sure.
So it would be our decision how much?
Yeah.
Or will be the
Right now we're saying that the contracting the contractor will decide how to divide it up.
It leaves room for it to be dependent on the proposals that we receive, but it puts a cap on what a proposal can be for, possibly.
Yeah.
okay.
It's been read a whole bunch of times. That was the issue, so I think that's the only outstanding thing. Does anyone else have any other comments about changes and such? Ananda, we've approved, we've gotten Chris's okay to use this and forward it. Is that right? Issue it.
Sorry. I don't think this I'm just gonna throw this out there. What if it's the contractor does the criteria, does the rubric scoring,
Yeah.
and then we get to see the applications after it's been processed?
So I would say the easiest way to do that is to have it be part of how we work with I don't think it has to be in this document, but when we're making the agreement with the contractor, to say that one of the things we want as a term of agreement is a report.
Wait, sorry. So I'm saying, like, I'm just thinking like maybe that could be like something that we when we were talking about like having the contractor, part of it is their experience level, like is their knowledge of all these things, right? It's just saying like we didn't necessarily feel qualified to evaluate all the different rubric areas. And I'm just wondering if maybe we could say like after they've done it, then we could sort of like see all the applications, and then maybe it would be more okay for us to then choose, like try to vote on the.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So the reason we didn't do that, Joe, was the original question.
Yeah.
Was what's the process we should set up to not like to keep, because this is going to be individual homeowners applying and they need to provide financial information,
Right?
Not just about the project, but about their personal finances. And so that information we do not want to be evaluating in a public meeting setting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, like that was my understanding of Chris's suggestion, that a clean way to do that is to subcontract it.
I mean, even like if we got anonymous proposals, that would be kind of. What I'm thinking is I'm saying we're saying must not exceed 100,000, but like what if it comes down and it's like here are the sort of rubric scores, and there's a bunch of 25,000 ones, or there's 100,000 and a 50,000 one. And it might be interesting for us to like revisit that and then like look at it as like a portfolio of properties. So do you know what I mean? I'm saying that I definitely don't want to be reviewing somebody's finances for sure. And I don't even think I am at all qualified to evaluate someone's ability to complete a project. You know what I mean? But I'm just wondering if we would want, if there's any interest in staying in it as far as like trying to determine the composition of the. I'm saying portfolio like in the sense of like a stock portfolio, you know, like
No, I understand what you're saying.
you know, it's and so say, like if we got there and it's like, oh, we could do it so that now we have 5 new tiny homes, or we could do it so we have 2 new, you know, standard, you know, 2 new refurbished garages, something like that.
So, but I think that I would say 2 things about that. One, that's like most broadly, I would say we're talking about a pilot that has a start and an end so that we can evaluate that everything about the process and use that as data to tweak things. So even if we don't do that in the pilot, it doesn't take it off the table for the future. So that's the first thing.
Yeah, I hear that.
And I do think keeping the pilot as straightforward as we can would be helpful. The second thing I want to say is that I think that would really take us way back into the land of criteria, because that sounds like making a decision not based on the criteria that got set out, but making a decision based on what fits together. And I just think that's a lot. I think it's complicated. I think it takes us back to, I do think it really takes us back to having to think through criteria again differently. And we've been at this for 6 months. So I'd really like to see, and to a certain degree, I agree with Garfield that we shouldn't be devoting as much time as we are to ADUs. Like this, it's got to stop at some point. So I'd really like to see us move this forward in the form that we have worked on very tirelessly in great detail, and know that part of the purpose is to be able to gather information from this process as it's implemented in order to be able to fine tune, drop it all together, or make other changes as we see fit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know. But my misgiving is just about the contractor doing the rubric sounds great. The part that I have a misgiving about is the contractor taking the public monies and then shooting them this way and that way. And then if people say if people come to us and say, why did that person get it and this other person didn't get it? We kind of say, oh, it's the contractor. We just gave the money to a contractor and then they spent it. But our rubric, but
no, I mean, like, it's not like they just, I mean, like, we have laid out, like, the criteria we have laid out is more thorough than what we laid out for the RFP. It is so specific, like we are giving them very, very clear direction. And I think that in terms of accountability, like, yeah, let's build in a step in the contract with the subcontractor to, like, when they make their decision, they report back on how many applications they had, how they ranked in the decision-making process, a summary report of what got chosen without identifying information. Like, this is actually a common way that government at different levels handles grant distribution. Like, there's an RFP out at the state level right now for opioid settlement funds to select a subcontractor to issue an RFP to distribute funds.
So I want to ask is if we're relatively settled on this, I think we can vote on this tonight. But is there a next step where we need to maybe ask the subcommittee to work with Chris and work on the criteria, the advertisement for the pilot there? what I'm mentioning is you wanted to put, criteria that the contractor will, as part of the agreement, review it with you. Is there another step, a heading, if you will, a preamble, a preface?
I think that there will be two, like this, the proposal as we worked on it requires additional actions by the trust. All of the PR stuff needs to be, all of the PR and outreach needs to be generated by the trust and can be distributed through the town. But so there is work that the trust will have to do there. And similarly, I think, anytime, and Chris, please jump in, but it seems to me that anytime Chris is involved in doing agreements on behalf of the trust, that we will have to adopt an agreement at some point for how we operate. So that I think those are steps that will have to happen in subsequent meetings. I don't think that they will take, I hope, yeah.
But those,
I wasn't imagining that we would continue to endlessly meet as a subcommittee.
but can we vote on this as a freestanding document tonight?
Yes, because it will allow us to begin the process of identifying a subcontractor and beginning and figuring out who's going to do what on the marketing and outreach plan.
I'm still sharing the screen here. Does anyone have any questions before we call for a proposal to vote? Would you like to read through the document? We don't have a lot of time, but or the rubrics. Everybody seems familiar with them.
Yeah, I've already read through them.
Do you want to open it up for in case anyone wants to talk?
Sure.
I don't know if anyone wants to talk, but
Joseph Method just mentioned that our policy in conjunction with the town is before we have a vote, we solicit public comment rather than holding all public comment to the end. So if you have a comment that you'd like to make very briefly on this particular issue, please raise your hand and I'll allow you to talk. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to, sorry, I don't mean to make you dizzy. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to accept the accessory dwelling unit pilot program in this document.
And a second, please?
I'll second.
Joseph. Any discussion? Hearing none. This is a roll call vote. Bill Cook,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes,
Ananda,
Yes.
Joseph,
Yes.
and Fred Clark. Yes, it's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. I think this will be great. I'm going to stop sharing.
Spectacularly.
I hope it works out very well.
Either way, I learned something.
The other major item is a continuation from the last meeting of the RFP response proposal for the Thornwood Inn, and I'm going to hold off for just a minute. I think we probably should update this committee on items that happen normally at the beginning of the meeting. I think we should try to do an update of activities, things that have happened since the last meeting. In this case, there were two interviews with the CPA committee. Both myself and Ananda attended, and the upshot is that there are about $2.3 million worth of requests and $800,000 of money available. So it's highly likely that all the projects will not be funded, and their committee's challenge is how to parse out the money in some format there. So at this point,
Fred, we don't have this on the agenda. I mean, it should be on the agenda, but it's
yeah,
not.
well,
And
it's a standard part of our process, but we should have it on the agenda printed.
Chris,
The agenda has a catch-all on it that says that other items that are appropriate for discussion can be raised.
it does not.
Does not?
No, it says call to order, approve minutes, accept habitats compliance, ADU, RFP, trustees speak, and the next meeting.
But at the very
Not
end,
all items listed may in fact be discussed. Other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law.
yeah.
That is, I think your point is well taken, and I think what we'll do is add a standard comment in the future agendas, which is basically an update. Okay. Enough said, we can move on. I see Philip Ornstein is here from the CDC. I'm going to ask if we can go right into the CDC proposal. This is a continuation for the last meeting. I think most of us were here except for Ananda. You were, I don't believe you were available then.
That's right.
I'm going to promote Philip to a panelist so that he can talk. I don't see your partner. What I'd like to do, since we talked about this, just to recap from the chair, we had a proposal from CDC in response to our general RFP. We listened to their proposal, and we had some questions and discussions. Unfortunately, we ran out of time and we were unable to conclude the meeting. So this is a continuation. And they've graciously agreed to come back and have a continuation. So welcome, Philip Ornstein.
Thank you.
Philip is the acting executive director for the CDC of Southern Berkshire and a member of the board. And he has been the consistent spokesperson on this issue. So since 4 of us have already heard, we need to, but not everyone has, we need to ask you to sort of recap. But if you could make it brief, I would really appreciate it, because I don't want to run out of time again.
Well,
And maybe we could, leave it for
The
questions.
proposal. I've read
Pardon
the
me?
proposal. I've read the proposal. So if there's something additional to what is in the proposal that,
Yes, I have too.
well,
You have the floor, Philip.
Fred, you told me I couldn't add anything further to the discussion or any additional information, right?
no, but I would say if there's something that you felt
Clarifying.
wasn't in the
Okay,
proposal,
no,
but was discussed in the last meeting that you would want me to hear, I would want to know that.
okay, thank you. Yes, and Jim Harwood, the board president, is going to be joining momentarily based on my text. But I think what I would like to say is first of all, we totally respect the fact that this is the Affordable Housing Trust, the Affordable Housing Trust Committee's decision to make. We certainly don't question that. What I would say is that I wanted to respectfully disagree with some members of the committee at our last meeting who expressed a view that our application was for a type of housing. Jim should be there if you could let him in.
Oh, yes, there he is. I see him now.
I want to I'm going to put hold off for a second, let him join the call, if you don't mind.
So Jim Harwood is the president, is that right?
He's the president of the board, yeah,
President of the board of
of the Community
Community
Development.
Development Corporation of Southern Berkshire.
Yes, yes. And Jim,
Welcome, Jim.
you may be on mute, Jim.
I was saying thank you, and sorry, I didn't realize we'd be so far up the agenda.
Okay.
7 o'clock, right on schedule for a change.
No, but I thought there were other things on the agenda ahead of us. My mistake.
Jim, we have now been given the time to say a few words.
Yep.
Briefly. So I was just going to say, I just said that obviously we respect that this is the committee's decision.
Yep.
I also would say that I wanted to communicate that we respectfully agree with the opinions that were expressed by some on the committee at the last meeting, that the housing units contemplated for the Thornwood were somehow not eligible for the grants to be provided by the Affordable Housing Trust. I certainly appreciate the fact that this is a relatively unique project. Obviously, there are others up like it that we have in town already, but it's not sort of the sort of right in the middle of the bell curve of the things that you look at. But I would say that it is, in our opinion, is very much eligible for your grant program, and we just wanted to to express that view. I also, and I'll turn this over to Jim if he wants to add anything, but I also just wanted to and I don't know if we got to this last week, but that we have projected monthly rates for the rooms in Thornwood. And they are projected to range from $1,000 a month to $1,350 a month. And those costs will include utilities and things like Wi-Fi accessibility as well. So those projected rates are very much are significantly under, as based on the tables that Chris Rembold provides, they are under the tables of affordability for 100% AMI and also for 80% AMI. So we think that those projected rates are within your guidelines. There's other aspects to that which we could come back to, but I just wanted to express that that sort of kind of headline statement that we thought our monthly rates are sort of within the numbers that you're looking for as part of your program. That being said, let me turn it over to Jim if he wanted to add something as well. And you're on mute, I think. Yeah.
It's noisy in the house here. That's why I'm on mute. I agree with Phil. After that last meeting, we did some research, and it's quite clear that Massachusetts regards SRO as a viable, affordable housing, and workforce rent levels as viable, affordable housing. And we see that there's no one-size-fits-all solution for affordable housing. There's a lot of different things. Last time we were here, you guys approved some people renovating a two-family, I think, so that they could provide those 2 units at an affordable level. We obviously do much larger projects where we do 50 apartments at a time at an affordable level. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and we see this as an important piece, not unlike Windflower, where they're using it as a sort of transitional housing, I believe, and they provide a certain set of supportive services. We also see this as filling a niche. It's not the same niche, but it's an important niche for both people looking for affordable housing at the workforce level, and it's really important for the economy because it allows, we're seeing a problem where local businesses can't find employees because they don't have a place to live. So we see that as that's the niche we're filling. You guys have a limited pot of money, and you get to set your own priorities. And you obviously are welcome to make whichever decision you want, but there's nothing about what we're proposing that is inappropriate for this money. There's no, you shouldn't feel like if you said yes, you might be violating rules. You're not.
Okay. So let's recap. The request is for $175,000. There were a couple of outstanding questions that I think we didn't quite get to. Oh, I'm sorry. There are two hands that are up, and I don't remember. I don't know who raised their hand first. So go ahead, Ananda.
So I just have some questions, having read through the proposal. On the question of AMI, there's ranges of rent presented. There's, at one point, it's referenced 100% to 110, another point 60 to 110. The RFP did ask for a clear indicator of what are your AMI benchmarks. And then similarly, I'm unclear on the number of rooms because the proposal kind of lays out a few different things in different places. It sounds like that year one, you'd be starting with 14 rooms available. Is that correct? What would be the total rooms available at the end of phase two when your construction's complete? And how are you restricting rooms in terms of AMI?
Well, so I'll take a stab at that, Jim. Yeah. I think the room count has moved around a bit, but very small amounts. We originally thought we'd have 14 rooms available when we open. We think it's now going to be 15.
Okay.
And we'll have an additional 3 rooms that will come online somewhere between 3 or 6 months or 9 months after we open. There's essentially an open space in the main floor that was basically a parlor area.
Yeah, I've been in the Thorn one, and
we're building out 2 bathrooms with adjacent piping. So it's 15, and then we'll add on 3, call it 6 months.
So it'll be 18 total when the project is
Yes.
finished with the existing buildings.
Yes, exactly. And in terms of the AMI and the room rates, I'm not exactly certain what materials you're looking at. I know it's something that I'm sure we created it, but are you asking about the targeted the rates that we're hoping
I mean,
to?
I have from your proposal that the room rates will range from 1,000 to 1,350.
Correct, right.
And that no matter that will fall under 30%. What I'm asking is, are you restricting rooms to certain levels of AMI? Like everything's being offered as a range?
No,
So-
no, and that's I understand your question much better, and it's a very relevant question. So, what we're proposing is to basically essentially deed restrict 10 of the units at 100% AMI and below. And we're proposing that 5 units are deed restricted, basically at 120% and below. And then 3 units will be flexible. And then the reason for that, let me sort of elaborate on that. As an example, we use 100% AMI for an individual person, and that's roughly $71,000. So in our thinking, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what residents are going to apply for these homes and what type of jobs they have and what their particular situation is and who they're responsible for in their personal lives. So we want to give ourselves flexibility to accept the people who want to live in the Thornwood within the boundaries of income levels that we're obviously talking about here. So if we have a nurse's assistant or a young teacher who's making $74,000 that needs a place to live, we'd like to be in a position where we could say, yes, this is good for you. We want you. This is great. We don't want to say you're 2% off the AMI as calculated by some statistician somewhere. So that's really why we're adding the flexibility. I think we're also thinking that there's a certain, there'll be sort of a natural sort of selection going on, and that if there's a concern about too many people who make too high incomes wanting to live in the Thornwood, again, big picture, the more you make, the more you're probably not going to be satisfied with what the Thornwood housing opportunity provides you, and that you'll be fortunate enough to be looking for a more quote unquote traditional housing situation, a 2-bedroom apartment with a full kitchen or something along those lines. So we're just sort of mindful of that and mindful of what we know and what we don't know. So that's why we're asking for that additional flexibility on 120% below. And then we are asking for 3 units to be completely flexible. And the reason being really extension of the same point. We don't know who's going to want to live there. What if we have, making up a number, 15 people who are perfectly eligible and they want to live there. And then we have 3 people and make more money and they're not eligible, but they really want to live there. Then we'd like to be in a position to say, charge them more of a market rent.
Yes.
And have that incremental income offset, essentially subsidize the other units. So just to recap, because it is a little confusing. There's 18 units. We're proposing we deed restrict 10 at 100% AMI and below.
Yeah.
5 at 120% AMI and below, and then 3 units are flexible.
So can you walk me through how that 10-5-3, how those rents will lay out to add up to the 202,860 in at 96% occupancy in that first year of income that you're showing from rental?
I have a spreadsheet that does that. I'm not sure how I would do that off the top of my head, but it's all in a pro forma spreadsheet. That's a huge Excel file that I would be happy to share with you. I'm not sure how to communicate that to you now. But the math is I have the math if you want to. If we could convene for an hour and a half, I can walk you through it. But obviously that's not the way these meetings are set up. But there is an elaborate pro forma spreadsheet that lays that all out by room, by year, and by occupancy rate and all that.
But it's not difficult math. It's, $1,000 times 12 months times 10 units.
Right. So yeah.
So that's 120,000.
Yeah, a rough stab at it. If I have an average rent of 1,200, I'm doing the math here, 1,200. So that's average rent by unit. So times 12 is 14,400 a month total rent roll. And then that times 18 is $260,000. And that's roughly that's the full occupancy rent roll when we get to the full 18 rooms. And then we assume a certain level of vacancy. And that accounts for the difference there.
Yeah. So with that average, how many units are you expecting to rent at 1,000?
I have a specific schedule it's not we have a schedule of rents by room that I'm staring at. I could share it with you if you'd like, but it's basically broken out roughly by size and square footage. And how big the room is and how small the room is.
Your responses have been helpful, but what I'm getting at is that in reading the proposal, there's a lot of information that deals in ranges, but it's very hard to pin down how many people are likely to be renting a room at the most affordable rate. And
can we share a screen with the spreadsheet? I think it'll answer the question.
yeah, Fred could facilitate that. And
I think I have to make you a co-host in order to do that. That's what's happened before. Do you want to do it, Philip, or?
I could share it. I can't make myself a co-host. Yeah.
Well, of course.
You can just make them panelists, Fred.
Well, they are panelists. I just made them a co-host.
Oh, okay.
Philip, I just made you
Yeah,
a co-host. That
great,
means you
all
can
right.
share your
Give me a sec,
screen.
give me a sec, I can do it.
Yeah, so while you pull that up, what I want to say is one of my concerns with this project, I'm not adverse to the idea that our community needs workforce housing. I was in favor of the Windflower project for that reason, which also is a workforce housing project. The part of what they're learning from that is that people are not likely to want to stay there over a long term. It's useful in getting to a better living situation than a single room. That's fine, that's great, but the price per room on this project is like begins much closer to their high-end price than it does to their starting price. And to your earlier comment about what fits for the trust or not, I would just add that it would be appropriate for the trust to be considering support for those 10 rooms at 100%. At which in the past we have supported specific aspects of a project, but the 120% and the unrestricted would not be eligible for funding from the trust.
Well, I certainly take your point on that. I think the concept that we were thinking of is that, I mean, this potential grant would go towards the down payment, and that you would be just a percentage or a proportion of the total equity ownership, of the Thornwood, and that we could tie, this proposal is trying to be sort of proportional to the amount of money that you would be putting into the pot.
Yeah, I mean, we just did this in a different way with the Sumner block, where we took money, the specifics of which are not at my fingertips, but we took money and restricted some portion of the units.
So, mechanical question, did my sharing work on this
Yeah.
screen?
Yes, yes,
So
and
it
it's
looks like
helpful.
we have about 5 rooms that would be pretty close to 1,000 a month.
Yeah, that looks about right.
Okay, thank you. I do have more questions, but Joe's been patient, so I will pass it to Joe.
Yeah, so Carol, I think I asked Carol when she was like previewing this. But I just want to get really clear on, okay, so somebody applies to stay here, and they get a room, and they're on a month-to-month basis. Is there going to be any mechanism from the landlords to say it's time to move on? Or is it really just like once they're in, they can go, month to month and for as long as they're happy?
I'd say the answer is that our intention is to have a mechanism where we are monitoring, their income. I don't want to, I can't say we have that procedure down totally. It's sort of a trade-off between the invasiveness, the labor intensity of monitoring, and the benefits of doing that. But in general, in their application, they'll be providing their employer, and we'll be confirming their income to determine their initial eligibility. And we do want to have a system in place, either manually through phone calls or just questions to the resident, or checking with their employer to make sure that they continue to be eligible.
Can I jump in, Phil? Can I?
My concern is more, my concern is not, so I realize now that it's basically they're like signing a new lease every month, right? So it's like a month-to-month lease, so every month triggers another if you're doing year to year, you'd be evaluating every year, but now you got to evaluate every month.
Right. So what we're envisioning is that, say you get to the 20th day of the month, and that we would be asking you, if you want to stay another month. And part of that question would, I think our first preference would be to rely on basically the representation of the resident.
Yeah.
We would ask them, are you still eligible based upon the income criteria that we've given you? and they should say yes. So
So can I
feeling they
jump
were
in?
truthful, and we would rely on that, you know.
Yeah, so,
Can I
I'm-
jump in for a second?
Please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, so the first thing I would say is that we have a lawyer that we're working with to draft a better understanding of the nuances of being a landlord in this situation, right? So it's different. We all acknowledge it's different than when you have an apartment on an annual lease. So the nitty gritty we're working on right now.
Yeah.
And
so-
I would say as a goal, no, but as a goal, we're not looking to say, oh, hey, you've been here 5 months, get out.
Yeah,
And I think though the rent renews or the agreement renews every month, I don't know that we need to audit their income every month. We might decide that it's adequate to audit their income every quarter or every 6 months, or even every year.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the landscape that exists in affordable housing. So, the most truthful answer is we're still ironing out those details, but that's the gist is that we're not throwing somebody out because it's a solution that's working for them, but they've been here too long. And we will have a method of making sure they're still eligible, whether that's monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. We have to figure that out.
Yeah,
Well, my understanding, this is Fred, my understanding is that we can't really throw anybody out if their income increases. That, under the fair housing guidelines, we basically have to do a rigorous job of verifying income over a couple of cycles at the initial application period, but we don't go back and check it every month, and we don't kick people out because they got a promotion at work. I don't think we can do that.
no,
I don't think state
you know,
eviction law allows that.
You don't think, but the point is that, I mean, this is a technical thing. To me, it's not a blocker. But I think that you're talking about like year to year, like price increases. Well, okay, I guess you're right. So when we sign somebody up for a lease, the next year we don't kick them out. If they came, yeah. So I don't think you would even need that mechanism. So that would be like work that you don't have to do, I would say. But
Well, yeah, I think if I may, I think we'll have some kind of mechanism to monitor that in some way. I think we'll also be mindful of the overall supply and demand for the rooms in the Thornwood.
yeah.
If this is more of an issue, if we have long waiting lists of people who want to get in, and we have sort of a sense that certain people may no longer be eligible. That's one of the factors that will go into the process that we think will make sense over time.
So there might be an issue, and this would be decided by lawyers, that maybe you wouldn't be able to do that with the units that come through us. If they came through us, I think you might not be able to do that.
I think if you're saying that, I want to emphasize what Jim said, is that we have lawyers who are doing this work for us to make sure that we understand the legal rule book as well as we can. And then we'll have to overlay any commitments or expectations that any grant providers provide to us for the operations of the Thornwood.
All right.
Yeah, my understanding is that once you have more than 4 units in a building, you fall under fair housing, and fair housing says you cannot evict somebody due to their financial circumstances, change in financial circumstances.
Okay. So just my last question. So what I was driving towards is this idea of having the employer subsidized housing. So like my main concern is somebody who like the cook for the restaurant. They get fired from the restaurant. They don't then get fired from the housing. I feel like as long as that is true, I'm comfortable with the project. I just think, and like I just don't know how that would work, but and then maybe also maybe that's okay for the other units, but I think if we gave you money, there would be a certain number of units that would be deed restricted to these like very tight parameters where that could not be true. I mean, does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, I certainly understand what you're saying. I would say that you know, we have some very direct support already from larger employers. And I could say very honestly that there's been no discussion about the need to sort of, you know, sort of kick people out if they're fired from employment. You know, I think that so this scenario has not been discussed. What I would say is that, you know, I think it's clear we would have no interest in kicking that individual out. I'm using blunt terms, but we'd have no particular interest in kicking that person out based upon that change in their employment. I think we would want to work with that person and make sure that they're still in a position to stay current with their monthly payments to the Thornwood. And that would be our primary consideration. And that deferred rents basically just cause an economic strain on the rest of the occupants. But you know, so we would work with that individual, and I guess right now we're in an employment environment where in all likelihood they'd be able to find some other employment pretty quickly.
I think we need to give everybody a chance. Joseph, I think that answers your question. You can come back later if you need to. But Ananda, do you and Christina, you had your hand up. So Ananda, your hand's up right now. And then I have some comments I'd like to make and questions. But we need to focus on being right on time so we don't run out again.
Yep, I'd be happy for Christina to ask her any
No,
questions first.
You're
okay?
Thanks.
Okay. I have a few more questions. You've mentioned that the proposal includes that you would subcontract to a management company or management contractor. Can you say more about who that would be at this point?
Well, our plan is to have an initial property manager that would be basically provided on a pro bono basis by one of our board members. That we view as an interim arrangement that would be established to help us kind of get our working model together, get our application process together, get the overall operations together. And then when we have a fully developed operational manual and procedures and we're up and running and we own the property, then our expectation is to, as quickly as we can, basically hire a third party entity to provide, you know, professional property management services to the CDC.
And who would that be, and what is their experience in that area?
So can I jump in, Phil?
Please, yeah.
So we solicited a few different proposals. We certainly talked to Berkshire Housing because we do a lot of work with them. And this is a little bit of a curveball for them. But we're talking with them about how they would approach it. And then, so the names of the other companies is going to escape me at the moment. There's a company out of Pittsfield. Was it Milltown? Might have been Milltown has a management arm. Milltown has a management arm that we were talking to, I believe. And there was a third company that I just don't remember at all. And so, you know, we're very preliminary. There's no real numbers there to discuss, but in the short term, we have a very strong property manager on our board. And we also have the benefit of the previous owner is going to help us get started as well, or the seller, I should say.
Who is also on your board?
Yeah, he is also on our board.
And what are their combined experience with managing income restricted housing?
Right. So this is a mix. So
Yes, but I'm concerned.
No, so it's a strange bird, right? So Richard, who's on our board, manages a lot of apartment units, and I don't think any of them are income restricted, although many of them are probably the rent levels are eligible for that. And David, who's on our board and currently owns the property, is very well versed in the daily and ins and outs of the property. And running a short-term hotel, but has no experience with income restricted. And somebody like Berkshire Housing has a lot of experience with income restricted property and not very much experience with a hotel type structure. So we're trying to find the right solution, and it's evolving.
The other thing is, one of the things that the proposal requests is other sources of funding, and I did not see funding tied to the current open application in front of the CPC. And I also have questions about, are you doing other fundraising? It looks and I could be missing something, feel free to pull something up and say, no, this is where you should be looking. Are there sources of funding from fundraising? Right now, it looks like you're looking at mortgages, construction loan, and the trust.
We also have our own money in the project, and we have a bridge loan, which we're fundraising against. But go ahead, Phil, you have better working knowledge of those numbers.
No, I think we're doing all of that. So we are applying for grants. We are doing our own fundraising, both community fundraising as well as fundraising with.
And do you have do you have a target for what you will secure with private dollars? Because I did not see that in the budget submitted.
I mean, so to basically give you some rough numbers, we need $340,000 to close on the property, give or take. So we have $100,000 on deposit of basically with CDC Capital. So we can roll that $100,000 in there. We are fundraising, and our target is to put together about $120,000 there. And then there's another $100,000 that we hope would be basically some type of grant from the town of Great Barrington. And then coming back to our $100,000 of capital, the CDC Capital, be very transparent there. We would prefer additional grant money to come in that would allow us to preserve that capital for future affordable housing initiatives. So that money is there to be used to close on the property, but we'd like to basically reserve it and keep it for additional projects that we are developing at the CDC.
And so where would the CPA money that you're requesting from CPC right now come in?
Well, I think if you're asking what if we get too much,
I'm not asking what if you get too much. What I'm saying, what I'm asking is, in the absence of information in the provided pro forma about additional sources of income, can you lay out your additional sources of income and show me how they fit together in the project? I don't care if you're raising, to me, great, fund it. But I do care that I do not have a clear picture.
So in broad strokes, we need, was it 340 that you said we needed to close on it? And we need like another 600 in renovation. And we have 100 of our own money in. We have a $200,000 fundraising goal. We have the money we're asking from you, and we have the money we're asking from the CPA. We have a bridge loan, and we have a construction loan. So the bridge loan and the construction loan will be useful to us if we can't to fill any gaps in the grant money and fundraising. But obviously, the better job we can do with grant money and fundraising, the less money we have to borrow, and the better able we are to keep our rents low.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question, which is really more an opportunity for you to speak to something that I think will come up in the community than anything else. But the recent Edge article announcing this project, mention a listed value for the property it currently stands at 893,000 roughly. And your proposal puts the purchase price at 1 million, well, 1.3 million. Would you like to speak to why those numbers are different?
Sure. So the $600,000 number is an assessed value by the town. The town's assessed value is always lagging an actual appraisal of market value because the towns are always trying to catch up with the market, but they don't raise their assessed values as rapidly because it would forces people's property taxes to go much higher. People don't like that. The appraised value on the property, Phil, is at 1.8.
Correct, yeah.
Is 1.8 million. And we're buying it, I think, at a 20% discount off the appraised value. We're also buying it substantially furnished, which is not part of its appraised value. So the idea that the assessed value is some reflection of the market or appraised value is just not the case.
Yeah,
Thank
just one clarification on
And
that.
I got a lot of comments about that, but
Okay, but just one mathematical clarification. The article broke down the assessed value between land and property, made a confusing topic even more confusing. The assessed value of the property is like $890,000, and that's what is used to calculate their taxes right now, and that's the land and the property combined, and that's how it
Yes.
works for virtually everybody. So it's $890,000 assessed. Appraised value is 1.8, and we're buying it for 1.36 million.
Thank
can
you.
I follow up on that, please?
I'm have no more questions at this point.
Thank
Okay,
you.
let's start there. What sort of an appraisal did you get? Did you get a regular real estate appraisal? And what was it based on? Was it a commercial based on the operating it as an inn or as a, you know, in what format? Was it, in other words, was it what I'm getting at is you can set a value based upon the income and churn, the amount of money that a property generates, and that's one way of looking at what a commercial property is valuable. But this is no longer an inn. This is no longer a bed and breakfast, and therefore it needs to be looked at in a different way. So I'm curious about your appraisal. And
I don't believe the appraisal was based on a cash flow as a business. I believe it was a property appraisal. And not only that, the seller had an appraisal, but we didn't feel that the seller's appraisal was impartial. So we had our own appraisal.
Well, the appraisal that we're referring to was prepared actually by the bank technically, but as the mortgage lender.
okay.
I mean, I don't know if it helps you, but at this point, but I could send you the copy of the appraisal.
Well, I mean, I think that Ananda alluded to something about, you know, the difference between the numbers that were in the edge and the popular perception. I
Yeah.
think, as we mentioned the last time we had you in front of us, there is a concern that the purchase is coming from a member of your board. And you've assured us, I believe, that it was an arm's length transaction, but I'm not so sure that everyone is going to understand that. And I think it is a concern, and I think that there is some pushback on those kinds of issues. I have a lot of comments that I want to make, and I'm very concerned about this kind of month-to-month hoteling concept. You, even in the Edge, Phil, you were still quoted as saying that was a sort of a, after 30 days, they come back and they renew for another 30 days. To me, that sounds more like a hoteling kind of a concept than a single room boarding house occupancy. I too did a lot of research with the state after the last interview we had with you. And I agree that congregate housing, a single room boarding house, it does qualify under the state guidelines for affordable housing. I do not think that it meets the letter of the law for affordable housing. I'm not sure that it meets the spirit of what the trust is intending to do and what we're trying to do in terms of creating permanent affordable housing opportunities and doing that in a way so that people can make a full transition to something else. I think that this is a viable option. I think it fulfills a need, as is indicated at Windflower, but I'm not so sure that it fits really into the program. And I'll make it personal, that I understand that we're intending to do with the Affordable Housing Trust, and that is to create permanent affordable opportunities for people. And I'm still a lot of concern about it. I don't know how we're going to. The other part about the affordability is the chart that we shared with you is based upon dwelling units. It's based upon the number of people living in an apartment, and I don't think that it can be directly applied to a single room occupancy housing facility. I think what you have is one dwelling unit with 14 rooms in it, or 15, as you say now. And, if we apply that, I mean, the chart only goes up to having 8 people in there. So if we had 2 8-person apartments, what would that look like? Well, it's an absurd calculation, because it would put the limited income down to about $300 or $400 per if you had 14 people living in one apartment, say, and that would keep the apartment down. But I really don't think that this chart is designed for any kind of single use occupancy. These are not studios. They're not apartments, as I understand it. They don't have cooking facilities. They don't have the other requisite requirements to make a dwelling unit. And I'm very concerned about that. And I'll stop talking right now if you want to respond.
Well, I mean, I'd like to, I feel like, well, personally, I feel that we should not rush a decision on this. I feel like we should not rush a vote on it. Because there's a lot of assertion going on, and a lot of these questions I would call like Googleable. These are questions that are basically just like, they're like yes or no, like there's an answer. So I don't think we should vote based on like, I think this, I think that. We can ask a lawyer, we can ask the town lawyer and just say, or we can ask,
Joe, that's not appropriate tonight. We have to vote tonight. We have 15 minutes.
We do not have to vote.
Okay.
I get super frustrated when we get rushed to vote on things when we don't have enough information, and we have, because it's like no one is talking to the positive merits of this. The positive merit is that it's not just shovel ready, but the rooms exist. Everything else takes a year to build, multiple years. This is something that we can turn on in a few months. Just like, so like, I don't think that we should just cavalierly throw it away. Like this is something that as part of my understanding is very much in our mission. And I'm just like a very, very much a bird in the hand kind of guy. Like, this is something that we can do. Everything else, like including the thing that we voted on today, that's not going to show results for years, like, for a year. And like, and the reason why the ADU thing I'm so popular, I'm so into it, is that that's a relatively short turnaround. And so there's a lot of things to be said for it. I think questions of like literally, is this something that we just can't legally do, it's not feasible, like those are very reasonable concerns. but I think they're also answerable concerns. We can just figure them out. As far as the understanding of the mission, I don't see anything that says permanent housing. And if there is something that says permanent housing, I'd be happy to see that. I see the mission as us trying to broadly attack the affordability problem. And we're saying workhouse housing, but like I would call it boarding. This is a boarding house. And boarding houses were a normal thing in the past in the United States, and they got zoned out of existence. So what we're talking about is something that fits a niche, and the scenarios, they just write themselves to me. So like one scenario is that, like, let's say that there's somebody right out of med school, and they want to be, or maybe they're from med school, and moreover they're like, I don't know, the condition, they can't stay in the country unless they're practicing, and there's like a they can do a rural I don't know, service, whatever. And so everything's in line for them to like become a doctor in this community that's underserved. And the one thing that's stopping them is that they can't stay anywhere. There's zero housing for them. And so this is something that they can literally slot right into it. And now we have a doctor in town. Like, OBGYN, like all the different dermatologists. Like there are so many things where it's like, there are no rooms. So saying that there's a month-to-month room option, it's not a small thing. I think it's a huge thing. But the other thing is that, and this is a frustration I have, with a lot of I'll get off my soapbox in a second, but I have a frustration with a lot of our conversations because a lot of them neglect the fact that we're dealing with a market, and a market is fungible. If somebody is able to find the short-term housing, then that means that someone else can get the long-term
Yes.
housing.
I agree.
So anyways, that's
Yeah, I mean, it's just that the clock ticks on,
Can we let Christina and Bill speak?
Could I possibly just say one thing to address this? You mentioned something specific about the rent rates, and I was frantically searching through my files. I haven't found it yet, but there is a granted project of SRO housing that received state affordable housing funding, and their rent chart was the same income levels. 60%, it was the same rent levels, even though it was an SRO. So I'm going to keep looking for that.
Christina, you haven't had a chance to talk yet, so.
I just wanted to say that I really would like to vote tonight, first. And second, I really don't think it's a cavalier decision, because we do have a very limited funding, and I think we should approach it with what is the best way for us to use that funding, not just because it's this gives us this many rooms and this ones. I am totally against boarding housing. I don't think a doctor would like to live in a boarding housing, etc., etc. I am very sick tonight, so I really don't want to talk much about it anymore. I just want us to make a best decision for the money that we have.
And we don't really have a lot of money, so we probably need to take that into consideration. Ananda, your hand's up. Bill?
I'd be happy for Bill to
Ananda
go.
first and then Bill.
I'd be happy for Bill to go before me.
Okay, I was just looking at our mission statement that says to provide housing options that are affordable to low and moderate income households in Great Barrington. Doesn't really say permanent. It just says provide housing options, which I think this qualifies as.
Ananda, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so Joe, I just wanted to say, I was in favor of Windflower and it just ended up not being something that we had to vote on, or they ended up getting money without coming to the trust. So just for you to know, like, the concept is not something I have a problem with. And then process-wise, wanted to ask Chris if you have any to kind of the question of rushing things to vote. My question for you is really a process question in terms of the fact that we've released an RFP, and do you see any problem with a discussion being continued?
No, I don't see any problem continuing.
And then the third thing I wanted to say that's on a process side is, for me, I think that it's one thing if we need more time to think through and deliberate. I think it's another thing if we're asking for more time because information that should have been in the application is not there, that we don't have the clear picture. And I haven't made that assessment myself yet in this conversation. I think that's important to think through. And then the last thing I would put forward is the application, that the RFP we've put out is a rolling application. So were we to say that the problem we're actually having is there's a concept that we're willing to debate, we have some different starting points on, but the information that we have in the format we have it is not clear enough. And these poor gentlemen are trying to fill it in for us, but it's not optimal for getting to clarity in the ways that we need it. Then I might suggest that an option is to reject this proposal, knowing that a proposal can be made with the open RFP. So those are just some thoughts. I don't have
I'll just follow up on those and a couple things. One is we can't overlook that you have an application pending with the CPA committee. And there are some issues with that, whether the town wants to fund it through both the Affordable Housing Trust and through the CPA, or whether it should be one or the other. To Ananda's point, if we were to continue or reject and ask you to come back, perhaps we could find out whether the CPA committee gave you money. In other words, I don't want to be in a situation where, we've used our honestly, we only have about $175,000 left if you take into consideration allocating $155,000 to the ADU. Now, there has been talk about delaying some of that outflow, but if you consider that money to be encumbered by our previous vote, we only have about $175,000 left in our entire operating budget for the next 9 months or something, 8 months. So I don't want to rush anybody into a vote who's not comfortable. I disagree with the idea of Googling the answers and such there. I felt that we were addressed. I do think that, as these gentlemen are trying to address our concerns, we have an obligation to be very clear about what we would like to see, what areas we want answers about to go forward with there. I will tell you that, as I said earlier, I do not feel like I'm convinced that this project is the best allocation of our funds. I feel like coming in to us and to the CPA committee I use the term double dipping, and I'm not going to apologize for that term before. I think that, we're trying to establish our credibility as an affordable housing source. And by coming in and doing that, I think that it does weaken our position, that we can be responsive in that way. I think that it could be perceived by others as trying to do an end around proposal. So I'll stop there and come back later.
So I have a question, just sort of a follow-up is, I mean, we have the option of not fully funding your request, but giving you some money. I don't know if that's something you would find acceptable. And also, it's problematic if we decide to give you money and the CPC decides not to. It's a little problematic. It's
You want to take that, Phil, or should I?
Well, I was just going to ask Bill if you could clarify what you mean by that. I would say that from our perspective, and certainly from my perspective, you know, we're dealing with a lot of uncertainty in this process, and you know, we're just trying to figure out how to get it done. And right now, our outcomes range from 0 grant money from the town, I guess, to $425,000, and anywhere in between. So, coming back to Ananda's question about our funding strategy, yeah, in retrospect, we probably sounded a little, I don't know, vague or messy, whatever you want to call it, but I think it's in part, very much in part, attributable to the fact that there's such a wide dispersion of outcomes in terms of our request for grant money from the town. And I find it hard to kind of make it reconcile in a conversation like this. So I'm being very honest with you there.
okay. I also wanted to address the urgency. I mean, if you're getting money from the CPC, that money won't be available until July.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you're getting money from us, I mean, that's where we have the more flexibility. Is that you wouldn't
Absolutely. And just to clarify that, is again, this trust money, as you guys mentioned, and as many forums, is much more, it has much more timing flexibility to it, and is much quicker money. If hypothetically you did not award us a grant, but we were awarded a grant by the CPC, our hope is to we would have a gap between our objective of closing in, say, February and opening in March, and the CPC money coming in June or July, and we would fill that gap in all likelihood with basically a bridge loan or seller financing from the current owner, David Thorne, to bridge that gap. And we've discussed that with a variety of parties involved, and the bank is okay with that as an example. So we have a mechanism in place there, but it's obviously much more straightforward to have the Affordable Housing Trust come provide the funds for the reason.
I'd like to motion that we continue the conversation in January. So are there any seconds for that?
I'll second that for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion that's on the table to continue the discussion for the proposal for the Thornwood project till our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is in January, the 3rd Tuesday. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Bill?
Oh, yes.
Bill is yes. Christina?
No.
No. Joseph?
Yes.
Joseph is yes. Ananda?
This is a motion to continue.
The motion to continue, not to vote now, but to continue to the next meeting.
Yes.
And I vote no. The motion carries 3-2.
Maybe we can get Garfield to come next time.
Could I ask a question?
Can we make it productive though? You know,
Yes.
can we come up with a scenario of, are there specific things that you feel that haven't been addressed either in our comments tonight or in the written proposal? Are there things that you want to see in the January meeting? I'm a little distressed that, you know, we keep talking and talking about things. There's things that I'd like to see us taking on some rather than, you know, rather than continuing some of these discussions. I, for one, have heard enough.
Yeah.
I would not vote for this. I've told you that before, but I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to convince me. But in terms of doing due justice to these gentlemen, are there specific things that need to be addressed? If you can't think of them now, if you think of them after the meeting, please send them to me and I will forward them through Chris to Philip and Jim.
So that we can talk about the SRO, the sort of the cases that already established that this can be done through affordable housing, that, you know, that could be distributed.
What I would like to find out about is what the deed restriction would be. What are there physical parts of the buildings or building that would be deed restricted? And to be a little bit more specific about what would be included in those deed restrictions. I'd also like to get a better idea of the mechanism to establish affordability for incomes. You know, who's going to do that? When are you going to do it? Is there going to be a report? Things like that.
Okay, writing these down. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments of things that they, you know, apparently we don't have enough information tonight to make a decision.
The thing that I'd like to see is the application asks for a full accounting of all of the sources. And so I'd like to see the picture that you are putting together with the various sources that you're cultivating. So where CPC fits, where the donor dollars fit, etc. So I'd just like to just look at it and get that full picture and understand. And like I said earlier, I don't have a problem with you being able to raise the money. I'm just trying to understand how it fits together.
So Ananda, can I ask, are you or Chris, can they provide answers in writing? Since these are specific questions that we've directed to them in a publicly open session. So I wouldn't consider it additional information. I would consider it responses to specific inquiries.
Yes,
In other
that's
words, you said
appropriate.
go ahead, Chris.
That's appropriate for them to give answers.
Ananda, would you agree? Yes, good. So Phil, you heard it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, we have our questions. Obviously, if you have more, please relay them to me.
Also, would you entertain, as Bill suggested, a grant of a lower amount? Would that be possible? And you don't have to answer tonight, you know.
Jim, do you want to take a stab at it, or should we hold off on that?
I know you want as much money as you can get,
Right.
obviously, but
Let's hold off, because honestly, you know, usually I drop off by 8. So
Okay, we'll hold off. That's fine. Sounds
all
like we
right.
have-
Any more discussion? Thank you, gentlemen, and we'll see you again. I will be in touch.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
we have press time and
Good night,
Do you
everybody.
have any more comments from the members here?
no.
There are 2 hands raised. Amy Turnbull, go ahead and talk, please.
Hi, I had a lot of back and forth with email with Ananda about the ADU program. I was late to this meeting, so I don't know if you voted on it yet, but
We voted earlier before you joined, I believe.
okay. So is it happening?
Is it happening? That's a loaded question. We voted to issue the RFP. We still have the mechanism to
No,
get
that's
it
not
up.
correct. We voted that we would move forward with the pilot.
We voted to move forward with the pilot. We still have a few administrative steps to go through.
So to add to those administrative steps that you might consider, I would like to add, since we spoke about a mechanism for affordability with the CDC, that you may entertain that for this project as well. There is currently no rental guidelines for the people who will inhabit these places. I know that there are guidelines under the AMI for the people who will be hosting them, but I would like to have you consider that the people who will be living in them will also need some kind of mechanism for affordability. And that was.
I'm sorry, Amy, I'd like to respond. And as I have clarified multiple times, all of the units built are AMI restricted, and the rent is restricted to 30% of the income of the tenant.
So 30% of the income of the tenant. So what is the requirement for their
The
income?
tenant, the restrictions will be up to 100% AMI for the tenant.
I can send you, Amy, I can send you a chart that shows what happens
Well,
in Great Barrington.
Okay, so when I
it
think
will
of
be income
AMI,
verified, that's built into the program. So
okay,
I'm just answering questions that you've asked and have been answered.
so when I think of AMI, I look to the guidelines for the Berkshire County. So it's almost $80,000, and 30% of that is $1,800 a month.
It goes by family size. No, Amy, I will send you the information that we have that's broken down by
I just
rent.
wanted to go on record that it needs to be entertained, that the people who will be living in these should be considered to be as important as the people who are hosting them. So it does no good to host what is essentially a studio when you're asking someone to pay $1,800 a month to live there. So if you're not going to entertain that, I don't think the program serves the population correctly.
I agree with this.
Thank you for your comment.
Amy, this has been discussed at length, and your conclusions are not how the program runs.
Well,
and it
you know what, Amanda,
misrepresents the work of the subcommittee and the purpose of the pilot to say that we do not care and are not considering the affordability of the unit itself. It is true that to make it work, it is not at 60% AMI, it goes up to 100% AMI, but it is a mischaracterization of our process to say that this project was not designed to build affordable housing.
Well, then you are then
Amy, go complain to the Affordable Housing Trust in the town that you live in.
Oh, wow, really?
Oh, no, Joe, that's not appropriate. Joseph, that's not appropriate.
That is on record?
It is, yeah, absolutely, I don't care.
Wow.
No, that is not appropriate, I'm sorry.
No, I represent the American Tiny House Association, and if this pilot is successful, then it has a precedent for regional development. So you are not.
You're not on the agenda. I'm gonna mute you. I'm sorry to ask to do that, but we don't really want to get into a debate at this time. And you had your opportunity to speak, and we've heard you, we heard your opinions, but we need to move on. Eileen, did you want to say something?
I had a question that I had wanted to ask Phil and Jim, but I'm sending it to you to ask them.
Okay.
Shall I tell you what the question is?
Please do.
Okay. If I'm a resident who loses her home, could I have a Thornwood room even if I am not working?
It's a good question. We'll pass it on.
Thank you.
I believe Phil Ornstein is still here, but we'll pass on your question.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other comments? Hearing none. It's 8:11, and usually I'm going to end this meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust. Thank you, everybody, for your participation and for your comments. Good night, everybody.
No.